everyone, and welcome to Dean Allen's Frontierland. I hope you're well. I hope you've had a good few weeks. This is actually the final Frontierland of 2023, and what a year it's been. We've interviewed some wonderful people on the episodes. Please go back and check them out. Everyone from conservation, music. So we've got a lot of variety on Frontierland. Tonight, we are going to be interviewing someone that you've all heard of course. The last few weeks of 2023 have been dominated by sport. Here in South Africa, we are still buzzing after the Springbok victory over there in France. We are now world champions for a record fourth time, which is fantastic. But if you're anything like me, it was tough going, wasn't it? The Boks winning their last 3 games by a single point, so they really put us through it. But we have a strong legacy of rugby here in South Africa. Going back to when the game was introduced back in the late 1800s, I've done a lot of writing about that. But more recently, of course, our World Cup heritage, starting in 1995, that amazing victory against the All Blacks. Again, of course, that was won by a kick in extra time. And tonight, we're going to be speaking to the man who kicked that winning goal. So I think it's relevant and apt that we bring in none other than Mr. Joel Stransky onto Frontierland.
Dean, hey Joel, how are you well?
I'm good.
I'm all
Thanks
good.
very
I'm all
much.
good.
Hello from the Eastern Cape. I believe you're in a humid KZN at the moment.
Yeah, so we relocated here probably 2.5 years ago, and my businesses were still in Joburg, so I commuted for almost 2 years. But this year, I changed my life a little bit, bought a business down here, and we sold a couple of our businesses up in Gauteng, so the need to commute was no longer there. And so I'm based down here, and it is sweltering at the moment. It feels like February's arrived in November. The humidity is tough. It's boiling hot. But that's why we live here, because the climate's so good.
Of course, and you're looking fit, and well, I know you are. I know you're a keen cyclist. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we go any further, have you recovered from that World Cup? Wasn't it incredible?
So still no nails, still showing signs of stress and aging and wear and tear. It was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. It was stressful. It was, for us as rugby fans and pundits, it was hard. For the players, it must have been unbelievably tough. But boy, they were just sensational to come through 3 tough games and by 1 point, 3 in a row like that. That's a sign of proper mental fortitude. It's a sign of brotherly love almost to go that deep for each other. It was a special time for that team and a special time for us as rugby fans here in our country.
Well, you were part of a special squad back in '95, and I think that's so important, especially in a team sport such as rugby. But were you? Come on, be honest. Were you confident that they could do it again this year, or did it kind of emerge during the tournament for you?
So I think the confidence ebbed and flowed. So in the build-up to the tournament, I actually spoke at a dinner down in Cape Town where I said, it would be surprised if we don't win it. I said at that dinner there were 2 things that would concern me, and one was the fact that Jacques Nienaber had announced that day that he would no longer be part of the Springbok coaching staff post Rugby World Cup. I said that's a little bit of a concern because. Obviously, sometimes a disruption at management level, filters down. But we saw none of that during the World Cup. The team were united. The coaching staff were united. We saw none of that, which was wonderful. And the other fear I had was just around, maybe the refereeing, the decisions, the way the game goes. And I thought we would have to be a little more clinical in our attack play to overcome some of those refereeing issues. And at the end of the day, I thought at the end of the day we got quite a few decisions go our way, which was quite fortunate at vital times. I see even yesterday the Ian Foster was moaning about 1 or 2 decisions still. I thought we were fortunate, but I think to win a Rugby World Cup, to win probably the most competitive Rugby World Cup of all time, you need a little bit of fortune. And we played out of our skin. We created opportunities. We made sure when we were fortunate, we took advantage. It was a wonderful World Cup. But to answer your question, I believed all along we would win it during the tournament when we battled a little against Ireland. It was probably a game we could have and should have won. I thought we were really lucky against France, and on the back of that, I was a little bit concerned, not about the England game. I knew we would beat England, although we nearly didn't, but I was a bit concerned about the final. But gee, the boys came out on top, just sensational.
And well, I'm glad you weren't concerned about England. Obviously, I'm a born Englishman, but I'm sitting here wearing my Springbok proudly. I jumped ship back in 2019. I certainly posted my colours to the mast. So I was sitting there watching that England semi-final, and I probably had more to lose than anyone, because I'd been bigging up the box for weeks with my English friends. They were all saying, "Oh, you'll beat us easily." And for 77 minutes, of course, they probably played the ultimate game against us. And I thought, you know what, they're going to do this. But we'll talk about the strength of the kickers and the mentality and how you help us out often. But for me, once they won that game, I thought, you know what, perhaps our name is on this trophy.
So firstly, I think I had more to lose than you around that England game, because I'd written a column for the Telegraph in the UK, and
oh my goodness.
In the column I said that if the All Blacks or South Africa lose their semi-finals, I'll fall over backwards. And I'm told that the English team actually put that up on the wall in the change room as inspiration. So yeah, I definitely was under a little bit of pressure there. But I'd actually planned my fall. But the reality was, and it was of slight concern, that the English, and for that matter, Wales, Australia, Argentina, the teams on that other half of the draw, they all had relatively easy pools. They all had easier semi-finals, and whoever got, or quarterfinals, I should say, whoever got into the semi-final would play against a team that had had a really rough run in the World Cup, big games, big matches, a massive quarterfinal for France, Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand. And whichever of those teams were in the semi-final would have a big chance, because the other team would be tired and mentally fatigued. They would be fresh, and they would have to get up for one game and turn over a big side. And we've seen it done before, and England damn nearly did it, which would have been a great victory. And they were well prepared. Their game plan was sensational. I reckon when they look back on that game, they will be thinking they should have won it. They definitely should have won it. Was it 68 or 74 minutes on our goal line? Petty Aronson knocked it on. They had a chance to seal the game at 15 points to 6. I think it was theirs to win, and they just couldn't find a way to twist the dagger and make it theirs. And fair dues to our guys, they bounced back. They found a way to win it in really tough circumstances.
I sense there was a real togetherness, as we said, comparisons with 95 in terms of this squad. Do you think that's a culture that Rassie has instilled? Does it come from perhaps Siya as the captain, or is it a real group togetherness? Have you heard, certainly in the media, what makes this particular Springbok squad so special?
Well, I think it's the Springbok culture. I think it's a culture that's grown over many, many years. History has a way of making people stronger, inspiring them, bringing them together. There's no doubt Rassie and Jacques, in the way they've gone about things, have enhanced that culture. They've made it even stronger. And I think probably most importantly, when you see the way Siya leads that team, there's a love for each other. Those players, they love each other like family. It is absolutely incredible how tight they are. You can see it in the way they welcome back players. I've seen clips of them embracing Scott Brits when he went to greet the team. We've seen them embracing Lukhanyo and one of the other injured players. I forget who it was when they returned, into the camp. It's a deep love, and that I think is part of the whole culture that's grown over many years. And I think in the latter years it has become a little bit maybe deeper in terms of Siya's leadership and the way he does things, the way he's galvanized the troops, the way he's galvanized us as a nation again. But it's a culture that is just incredibly strong. It's not something that you grow overnight. It's something that you grow over time.
I've never experienced this anywhere else. I'm a sports historian, and I've written about the history of the Boks. I mean, going back to the first ever overseas tour in 1906, that was just after the Anglo-Boer War. This team was seen as a means of bringing the country together again. It was a tour of reconciliation. I mean, just 4 years after the war had ended, which is quite incredible. Every time we seem to go to a World Cup, and you all know more than anyone, we'll talk about 95 in a moment. But again, this year, a victory for the Boks, it's more important than just a rugby game, isn't it? I mean, it's seen as doing more for this country than perhaps politicians or anyone can do. And does that ever get to the players? I know they talk about the bigger relevance of what they do and who they're playing for. Siya, especially, an incredible statesman, he talks about this is for the country. But surely at some point, the players must feel that weight on their shoulders.
So it's interesting because I don't think you can run onto the field between the four lines and try harder because there's another external, little bit of pressure. I don't think you can try harder. When you put that rugby jersey on, whether it's your schoolboy under 13B shirt or your Springbok shirt at a Rugby World Cup, I think you run on as a rugby player and you do your absolute best every single time. I smile when someone says, "Oh, that player today gave 110%." A player gives 100% every. You go and give more than 100%. A rugby player gives 100% every single game. So I think sometimes there is maybe a little bit of pressure, but the pressure can be an inhibitor more so than more inspiring because you are already giving your absolute everything. And I think sometimes it's about controlling the emotions, controlling the feelings around that pressure. But certainly it just creates, I suppose, a narrative that maybe gives you comfort or inspires you a little bit more to make sure you train hard during the week, you do everything that's possible, you enable yourself to run on the weekend and give that 100%. I think it's also a position of privilege for Siya and for their team to be able to say that, for them to talk about it, to understand the relevance. We're a troubled nation. Let's be quite frank. We're a troubled nation. We live with day-to-day issues that are just second to none. One of the highest crime rates in the world. The murder rates, the breakdown of infrastructure, load shedding. Our rand is declining. Unemployment. We live in a troubled country, and so when there is something like a sport, whether it's the African Cup of Nations in 1996 or a Rugby World Cup in 1995, 2019, or 2023. It does give us, and I left out 2007, but those other three World Cups seem to have played a slightly major role in bringing us together at an important time. And sport can do that. Sport can bring people together, as Madiba famously said. This is an opportunity that the rugby players took advantage of. They spoke about it. They wanted it to be something that united the nation again. They wanted it to be uplifting and inspirational for everyone in our country, and unbelievably, it was. There were obviously the detractors post Rugby World Cup, like Julius Malema and the EFF, who we should just probably forget what they said. But it is uplifting. It is inspiring for us as a nation to see, group of players, group of people coming together in harmony with real love and achieving something special.
And I think it's even more special. Most people know the history of the Springboks, the history of the emblem and the fact that it was contested. Obviously, Mandela embraced that during the 95 World Cup. But for me, to explain the spirit of South Africa to people outside, it happened in 2019 and it happened again during this World Cup. People of all backgrounds just put aside their differences, cultural differences, political differences, and we come together through a united cause, which is the success of a team we identify with. And by the way, you mentioned a lot of the problems we have in South Africa. As I often give at my talks, I have to remember that the world is a troubled place. Other places have the same kind of issues. But the thing is with South Africa, Joel, don't you believe, our PR is poor. the news that tends to come out of places like America, Australia, the United Kingdom tends to be positive. It tends to put a positive spin on how they're handling situations. I think, again, the Springboks and sporting success has highlighted what's good about our country. It's an incredible country with incredible people and spirit. And I think back in 2019, I had to explain this to an English friend of mine who didn't understand. I said, John, this victory means more than just a game of rugby. This is for a country that needs this. It needs another shot in the arm to get us to the next World Cup. So that's where this pressure that we've talked about, maybe the players, thankfully, don't realise what was going on back here. But I know myself, like everybody else, certainly for that final few weeks, we had a knot in our stomach because we knew we were near to, again, a positive experience in our country. And no one knows that more than you, because you talk about something that happened back in '95 with that marvellous World Cup victory. And it's a legacy that lives on well beyond the World Cup.
So firstly, if I can just comment on I think our PR is bad. I think that's, probably a valid point. But again, I say this with a sore heart. I don't think we do enough to fix the troubles we have in our country. I think our government is disappointing at the moment. We have such unemployment, we have such poverty, and I know there's this constant, I guess, this battle between the good guys and the corruption and the bad guys. But I can't help thinking we need to be better. We have little minor victories that we can talk about, but we don't have big victories. We don't see, the criminal element in this country being locked up. We don't see load shedding being properly addressed right now and changes being made. We don't see work going into fixing the water infrastructure. We don't see, jobs being created for those who are unemployed. It's private charity. We see the kids who are hungry. We see kids who deal with daily issues that are just deeply saddening. I think our government needs to do more, and that is why we as a nation need that upliftment. We need our sporting teams to bring us together. It's why people of all culture at times like that come together. It's as Madiba said, sport has this ability to unite people, and winning teams have this ability to uplift people. And the Springboks, they may still have the Springbok on their shirt, which in one or two Muppets eyes is an emblem of past, atrocities. But this is a team that brings people together. This is a team that the nation love and support, whether it's because they're winning, whether it's because of Siya Kolisi or Rassie Erasmus jockeying on it. It doesn't matter. It's a wonderful vehicle to bring people together, and long may that continue. Sure, it's to your point, to see people of all cultures from all walks of life on a Friday wearing their Springbok shirt like you are today, waving the South African flag, it is just, for all of us, every single one of us, it's uplifting.
Now, we first met a couple of years ago. I was doing a series of interviews for the rugby charity, the Players Fund, and I had the privilege of interviewing yourself alongside Oz Durant, Morny du Plessis and Francois Pienaar. It was the anniversary of '95. And I remember the conversation we had prior to the show, and what I admired about you, I don't think we mentioned rugby once. It was during COVID. There were bigger things to worry about, but you always make that link between sport. But obviously, you are aware of the issues that are happening in this country that we're all aware of. I want to just step away from rugby for a moment, Joel, and just talk a little bit about yourself. For many of the younger viewers, they'll know you as a TV pundit. They'll be watching the rugby perhaps and seeing you on the screen. Most people watching this will know exactly what you did on a rugby field. But what's life beyond rugby been like for you? And what are you busy with at the moment?
So life beyond rugby for me has always been some sort of business involvement. I was a corporate animal for a little while, and about 12 or 13 years ago went off into the private sector and helped set up a business with a mate of mine, and the business grew. We incorporated another friend and our attorney, a group called the Pivotal Group. We sold 2 of our businesses last year. We still have 5 businesses in our stable, and then about 3 years ago, I ended up moving back to KZN. My wife is a North Coast girl, and we to cut a long story short, we came back here for all the right reasons, sad reasons, but the right reasons. And I commuted to Joburg for 2 years, and then I bought a business down here in KZN, and exited the day-to-day stuff in Joburg, and we live here in Salt Rock, and I work here in Belita. I've got a factory now. We manufacture paper products, toilet papers, paper towels, all those sort of things, and we distribute, all the hygiene and cleaning chemicals and solutions. So that's what keeps me busy. It's definitely outside of our technology. I've grown up in the tech world, and all our businesses were somehow involved in technology. But it's a great little business. It's small. I've got great people, and we're growing. We're trying to grow.
Well, you're looking as fit as you always did, and I believe that you're a keen cyclist. Anyone that follows you on the social media and the stuff, if I Google your name, as many pictures of you come up on bikes as they do on a rugby field. What's that all about?
So actually, on social media, I'm not all that active on social media, but I think probably the only thing that I do get active about is the cycling side, because it's a great thing to share. It became, when I got injured playing rugby, the doctor said to me, "You can't run, get on a bicycle," and so I cycled for about 2 or 3 years while the bones in my knee recovered a bit. Then I was able to run a bit. I carried on cycling, and then the adventure. I'll tell you what actually got me into cycling. Ilana Meyer phoned me in 2009, September-ish. She said, "It's Ilana Meyer." I said, "The Ilana Meyer." She said, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, Ilana, really nice to chat. How are you?" Chat. She said, "I run a charity. Do you fancy doing the Cape Epic next year for charity?" I said, "What is it?" She said, "No, it's a little mountain bike race." I said, "I'm in." She said, "Have you got a mountain bike?" I said, "No." I said, "But," she said, "Well, I'll arrange you a sponsored one, and for this effort, and some help on the training. That'll be great." About a week later, I think on the Sunday Times, in the little column there, so Stransky agrees to do Epic for charity. I thought, sure, but I better check this thing out. Wonder what it is. And that was when the bug bit, realized I had to put some effort in. And since then, it's been just the most wonderful journey of endurance sport. It's like a proper addiction. It's a drug. I've done a few Ironmans. I've done some crazy things. I ran comrades. But the focus has been mainly on the mountain bike. And it keeps us young. It keeps us healthy. It keeps us fit. To our conversation a little bit earlier about the rugby culture, the rugby tribe, cycling has its own tribe of people. It's you ride with a partner, you ride into these beautiful trails, you're out in the mountains, you see things that you wouldn't normally see in life. It's a great way of living. It's a great it's a way of living as opposed to just doing a sport.
Long may it continue. Talking of beautiful parts of the country, we are in Nelson Mandela Bay, the Eastern Cape, absolutely fantastic. We're a little bit sore at the moment because the Boks missed us out here in PE on their victory tour. They went up to East London.
How can they do that?
I know, exactly.
That's a poor show,
exactly. Right? It is a poor show. We're hoping they'll come back, certainly with the Siya connection and some of the boys from here. As you know, we're rugby mad here, sports mad in Port Elizabeth, Quebec. Can we go back to your sort of early playing days? Days of amateurism. It's a different game. The domestic game was so probably bigger than it is today. Can you give me some memories and some of the characters from this part of the world that you played with?
Oh, it was hard. Jeez. So there's one thing we always knew, and in my time, probably more at the Sharks, then I finished off with the Stormers in Western Province. We always knew that we were a good side. We won the Currie Cup in 1990, and we had a strong team. We had a lot of Springboks. It was a good side. We always knew we had a really good chance of beating Eastern Province. We always knew we could maybe win the game, but we always knew we were going to lose the fight. It was always hard as nails. It was tough and brutal, and you had guys like Audrey Geldenhuys and Armand Dupuis in the second row. Frans Erasmus, the late Frans Erasmus, the Domkrach, the prop. Andrew Patterson was the hooker down there for a while before he moved to Western Province. Garth Wright, my first game against Eastern Province, I played against Garth Wright, and I think Henny Leroux came on the scene somewhere around about then. Donnie Gerber, and it was a team full of big hard men. Put a human in the loose forwards. It was always tough. I think if I think back, I don't remember losing too many. I remember always being battered and bruised coming off the field against that Eastern Province side. And by the way, it was home all the way. To go down to the Boot was also tough. You know, the Boot Erasmus Stadium down there. Oh. It ran the other way. The wind was always a factor. The change rooms were small. It was the crowd were partisan. It was a tough place to come and win.
Well, we're known as the friendly city, but it seems like when it comes to rugby, we certainly didn't give a friendly welcome. It was only after in the bar, I'm sure you got to know the lighter side of the guys.
Yeah, and such great guys. You know, there were, I mean, some wonderful stories about the players down there. Franz Erasmus in particular, what a character he was. I mean, and when I got to know Andrew Patterson a bit more, playing with him down in Cape Town, who is also a mountain biker, by the way. He used to tell us the stories of Franz Erasmus and the boys down there. It was. They were a tight bunch as well. They loved their rugby, but they loved their fun times as well.
No, I can imagine. No, I'm sure some of the people watching this would enjoy that trip down memory lane. As you said, the Boot Erasmus Stadium. I ran around there the other day, and I thought, what a cauldron this must have been. What a bowl, a real sort of old amphitheatre of a stadium.
Yeah, very much so. And sort of like, as you said, like built in the bowl, built in the valley. The wind used to channel through there. It was. You know, I think for the kickers, it was always hard. Playing into the wind down there was brutal. It was really tough when the wind was pumping. But that's what home ground advantage is all about. It's about understanding the conditions, knowing the conditions, and playing to the best of those conditions. And by the way, also, I was down there, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago, and drove past and tried to drive in and have a look. It's sad to see it almost gone. You know, it's gone. It's now like a little empty valley, but boy, in the old days it was a cauldron.
Oh, amazing. There's some memories coming through. I can see some of the comments they're talking about Dani Gerber and Henry Bezuidenhout, I can see, and there's various names coming through here that people are just loving these names. Michael John Godfrey, is that another one that's coming through here? I can see. No, we're craving live sport here in the Bay, and anyone watching this, please bring some top class rugby back. We had the Stormers here season before last. We had a very good attendance, but of course we need the Boks back in town, whether it's on an open top bus or preferably to play in our beautiful stadium, which is still here waiting for everybody.
And what a beautiful stadium it is, isn't it? I mean, we've been down there a lot to watch and commentate and work. It's a great environment and so well supported, and hopefully there will be test matches to come down there. You know, the one thing about, I guess, saying to the Stormers, go and play there, for them, it's the whole thing about a home game is about the crowd support, but it's about the comfort of your stadium and about being in a home environment and more than likely sleeping in your own bed and, you know, going to the stadium. So I understand the difficulties of taking Stormers games there because it doesn't quite disadvantage them, but it's not the same advantage as playing at home. But there's no reason we shouldn't have, at least one test match a year down
there. No, of course. Well, talking about home advantage, that leads us perfectly into 95, because that was when, of course, we had the privilege of hosting rugby's biggest spectacle. I first arrived in South Africa in the mid-90s. I came just after the tournament, but I remember even watching back in the UK and thinking there's something special about this tournament. There's something different about the importance of South Africa and what was happening at the time. Now, you, of course, were an important part of that 95 squad. I had the privilege of interviewing Francois, Pienaar, Mornay, Duplessis and Os Durant, and of course, the players at that time. Very different characters, very different abilities, but there was something special about 95. When did you realise that there was a momentum? And did you realise early on that perhaps, again, this was more important than a rugby tournament? You had a role. Or was that something that perhaps when we've watched Invictus and the Clint Eastwood movie has been instilled on that episode at the time? At the time, did you know what was going on, Joel?
So firstly, we've on the subject of the 95 squad, Hannes Straden passed away last week, and that was desperately sad and tragic, and our condolences obviously out to his family and his kids in particular. Very, very, very sad news, and another loss from that team. And actually, it's a team we've lost a few players from that side. So it's quite, it's 4 players now who are no longer with us, and a couple of the management team, 3 or 4 of the management team. So it's a team that's diminishing, sadly. But condolences to the Australian family. So I think going back to that side, in the build-up to the World Cup, probably, we thought we were a good side. We thought we were full of good players, but we just didn't know. South Africa had been in isolation for a while. We hadn't really, we were growing into the international scene. We weren't the most capped team because we really had 2 years of Test rugby. So going into that World Cup, we just didn't know. The one thing that Kitch Christie always said to us, he said, it's the fittest team will win the Rugby World Cup. So we trained bloody hard. We trained like machines. We had Ray Morte who came and assisted and on the defensive side and on the fitness side. But between Kitch and Ray, they ran us into the ground. And two things happen in a team that trains as hard as that. Firstly, you become really fit and you stop believing in your abilities. And secondly, you become close. You become that Springbok culture. You become that tribe of players who would die for each other. Because when you go through hell together, it brings you together. It makes you stronger. And teams with great spirit, traditionally and historically, are great defensively because they work their socks off for each other. They fit and strong, and that was exactly us. We were a team. We didn't play the flashiest rugby around. We didn't, go out and score hundreds of tries. We were a team that did the basics well. We were big and hard and physical, and we defended like Trojans. We kicked our goals and we scored a few tries here and there. And that was really us. And I think the longer the tournament went on, beating Australia in the opening game, obviously seeing the fans come out in their green and gold with their Springbok flags at Newlands, in such unity. That inspired us and moved us forward. Madiba's magic touch to come and address us and chat to us before that game, to come in the change room before the final. Those were little steps along the journey that just helped grow the self-belief, that helped grow the confidence, that got us maybe to a point where we could win it. And then, obviously in the final we played really well. So it was a journey. It was wasn't always an easy journey, and adversity makes you stronger. And we had our fair share of humps along the way. But we came through those humps, and we came out on top. Invictus was, the story of Madiba and Invictus was wonderful. Obviously, the rugby scenes were all contrived. But the story itself was fantastic. It was about a team that maybe in the beginning didn't have all that self-belief, weren't the favourites, and came out on top. It was a great South African story. It epitomises us in a way as a nation, and to meet Clint Eastwood and to meet Matt Damon along the way, and Scott Eastwood and Morgan Freeman was for us really special. But if you'd said to us before that World Cup, one day Hollywood will make a movie about you, we would have told you you'd be smoking your socks. So interesting times. I think, to come back to the question, we were young rugby players. We didn't probably understand the magnitude of a nation coming together around a sports team. We wanted to run on the field and play the game. And the longer the World Cup went on, we probably realized the significance. We saw people uniting around us. But I think afterwards you maybe understand it a little bit better than you do at the time.
Well, you certainly defined your place in history. I mentioned at the start of the interview that the Boks won their final 3 matches by a single point. By the way, a bookmaker in the UK said if you'd have bet the odds of the Springboks winning the final 3 matches in the World Cup by 1 point, you'd have got 19,000 to 1. The odds of that ever happening,
sure.
which is quite incredible. But we talk about points. You you did score the most important 3 points, I would say, in South Africa's history. Not only that, you scored all the points in the final, but that drop goal. I just want to go to the psychology of the game, Joel, because I've just been watching this World Cup and I've just been amazed at the kickers. Kicking wins games of rugby. There's no doubt about it. It's like they say in cricket, catches win matches. What goes through the head of someone like Andre Pollard when he steps up to kick that goal? You obviously your winning goal was a drop goal, which is an amazing skill. It's spontaneous, but you had the nerve to kick match-winning points in that final. Now, my wife is the biggest Andre Pollard fan. I actually love him more than her at the moment. I've got a crush on the guy.
We all do.
There's a reason why he's one of the richest played rugby players in the world at the moment. What makes kickers so special? And just tell me about your mindset when it comes to that, because it must get to you the nerves. You're not superhuman.
No, so it doesn't. So I think that is the skill. And Andre, I haven't really chatted to him about this, but I would think most kickers, either we're too daft to understand the pressures, or we have a way of blocking them out. I think that's the only way to describe it, because it's if you feel those pressures, if you're aware of those pressures, you are going to tense up, you are going to tighten, and you're going to make mistakes, you're going to miss kicks. That's the reality. And we see it with some of the kickers. I'm loath to say it, but sometimes Mani Libok tenses up. Andre Pollard doesn't. That's the absolute reality, and we've all seen that. It's a great skill set. It's a great ability, a mental strength to have, to be able to perform under pressure like that and not tense up. You see it with anyone who kicks a standing ball or hits a standing ball. Tiger Woods, Scotty Scheffler, the top golfers in the world. David Beckham, the great penalty takers, free kick takers. Every time there's a time to stand and wait and think about the consequences, those are the guys. That's where you judge someone on whether they tense up or they don't. And the great goal kickers don't. They have this ability to either block out the pressure or to maybe not understand it. To not. And I don't mean that as saying they are daft. I say it tongue in cheek, but it is an ability to not even consider it. It doesn't even come into your thought process. When I was kicking it, whether I was kicking the first kick of the game or a kick to win the World Cup, it never ever entered my mind the importance of the kick. There was only one thing. It was about the process of kicking the ball and doing it the same every time. Everything else is gone. And I think
you've got to tell me the truth. Surely when that ball was passed to you and this was extra time, you had the one chance. Did the significance of that moment go through you when I think it was Mertens who was charging you down, wasn't it? No,
there's no significance. All you do is you're so focused, particularly on a drop ball, you're so focused on catching the ball, body position, dropping it right, kicking through the ball, making sure it's a good strike. There's no time to think about anything else. Maybe I'm the dwarf guy who doesn't have time to think about all those other things. But the drop goal, as you said, I mean, it is spontaneous. There's definitely, when it comes to drop kicking, there's no time for pressure. It's when you're standing and you look up at the posts from a place kick and you think, okay, where's this going to go? Oh my! And to your point, if you are thinking, oh my goodness, if I kick this, we're going to lose. That's when you're definitely going to miss. It's when you're standing there and you think, right, I'm going to kick this over now. That's the point I'm aiming at. That's where the ball's going to go, because I'm going to step off right. I'm going to step there. I'm going to kick there. Then I'm going to plant my left foot. Then I'm going to follow through perfectly. And because the process is right, the end result will be good.
Well, that's exactly the difference why you've got Springbok caps and I haven't, because I overthink things and I think, what would I do if I missed and that? And that's the vast majority, of course, of the armchair players who sit at home and they start watching and they think they could do better. But I just want to make that comparison between the era you played in, because the mental side of the game is certainly recognised that we have sports psychologists. Did you have any of that kind of support back then, or was it left to you to actually get through your own challenges as a sportsman, albeit an individual sportsman playing within a team?
So for the Springboks in that era, I don't think we had any. I think no, we didn't have anyone on the psychology side. We did already in 1990 with the Sharks with Natal when we won the Currie Cup at Loftus first. What we beat. I hope Nas is watching when we beat Nas and the Blue Bulls.
He isn't. We'll share it to him.
We'll share it. We'll send it to him. But we actually did have Ian McIntosh brought in a sports psychologist then already, and who worked with us a little bit. And really it was about instilling or ingraining deeper the self-belief, because everything that chap did was about making us believe we could beat the Bulls at Loftus on that day, this great Bull side, and which we did. So back then already there was a little entry into it, but certainly nothing as intense as we see now amongst the teams, and more importantly the individuals. Because to going back to the goalkeepers, I think every single golfer in the world works with a sports psychologist.
Do you have any regrets that you didn't play rugby in a different era? A lot of sportsmen I talk, perhaps a little bit older than you, missed out on international competition because of the politics of the country. But I'm particularly thinking about the professional side. Do you look at the likes of Pollard now and what they're earning at Leicester and for the Boks and whatever, and think, that could have been me in a different era, or are you glad that you played when you did? And what are the main differences with the modern game? I know the refereeing is probably different. You might want to touch on that.
So I'm not someone who looks back really, so I look forward. My eyes are facing forward, so I don't ever really look back thinking, "Geez, I'd love to have played in a different era." Obviously, I would. It would be inhuman to look at it and say, "Well, I would love to have earned the money the guys are earning. It would have changed, maybe life in some ways." But I'm very happy where I am. I think if I played in a different era, maybe I wouldn't have kicked the drop goal. Maybe we wouldn't have won the World Cup. Maybe there'd be parts of my life that are very different. So I don't look back with harboring any regrets around the time I played. And in some ways, I think we were quite blessed. We played at the end of the amateur era, where there was maybe a little bit more fun, touring was maybe a little bit more robust. There was no social media in those days. The guys, you could go out and let your hair down a little bit. And then we crossed over into the modern era for a while. So I think we were fortunate. Maybe we were a little more fortunate to have some time in the modern era, the professional era, as opposed to the likes of Johnny Gerber or Nas, for that matter, who missed it completely. Maybe we were blessed.
No, I think it was a very interesting period in rugby history, but certainly in South African history. And I think you've etched your names into social histories of this country, regardless of sport. And as I said, when Hollywood comes knocking, and Mr. Clint Eastwood, there's an amazing story there. And it's something that I've often talked about publicly, that I want the rest of the world to know about. But I just want to end up now and just take us back to the future of the Boks. We of course, we're very well known of playing year by year. I think that's our success. We don't necessarily look to the next World Cup, but if you're going to look at the next 4 years now, Joel, some of our players are aging. Perhaps they reached their peak now, which was rightly so. This was expected to be one of their strongest years in 23. Have you got hope for the future? Can we do it for a fifth time?
So I think, firstly, I think you said it earlier, the government's probably not good at marketing or telling us what they're doing or projecting the good news. And maybe SA Rugby don't talk about it enough as well. They have a program that is aimed for the future. Rassie and Jacques have a whole system that they've had for the 7 years that they've been there, since 6 years that they've been there. When they took over in early 2018, their goal was to win the World Cup in 2023, not 2019. They had a long-term plan, and their plan is still one that evolves year to year to include, continuity into the future. It's not just about now. I think every team, having said that, I think every team does go through a period of evolution, and I think we are going to be in one of those periods now. As good as that plan may have been as much as there may have been youngsters that have been brought in to be mentored, to learn, to get a taste of the squad that will maybe come in on a more regular basis now in the next year, the next 18 months. I think there's no doubt that some of the stalwarts of the side are going to evolve out of the squad in the next little while. And you can't help but look at some of the players that are maybe getting towards the end of their international career, or who have already declared the end of their international career. And so you will find that, just looking from the front backwards, Steven Kitsoff, Frans Malherbe, Bongi won't be around for the next World Cup. You would think, touch and go. Eben, I doubt very much will be there the next World Cup. You can go through the whole squad. There are names that won't be there. So we are going to go through a period of evolution, but there's two things that will keep us in good stead. One is we in this country produce a plethora of talent year in, year out. We just churn out big, strong rugby players with great skills. There's just no other way of looking at it. We have a plethora of talent coming through the school system that have been coming, that are still coming, that will continue to come forever and ever. It's just the nature of who we are. So the talent is there. That's the first thing. The talent is there. In the last few years, we've seen this our style of rugby develop a little bit from very much a box kick from 9 and a big boshing game to a little bit more sophisticated, the wingers and the outside backs counter-attacking, getting the ball, playing the game a little bit more. So I think the thought process is there as well. The thought process in terms of developing our players, the thought process in terms of developing our game. And Rassie has still got a 2-year contract left. He's there for another 2 years. So I've absolutely no doubt that in the next years, this evolution might see a little bit of inconsistency, but the talent will ensure that in time to come, we'll always be a great rugby playing nation.
Oh, without a doubt. Let's hope people have got the patience for that. I just want to end up, because I'll kick myself if I don't ask you. I remember during our previous interviews, you let me know a few stories that are happening in the background in '95. We talked about team spirit, and you can just see that there's a lot of fun in the current Boks squad. They got a really good togetherness, and whether it's Faf or whoever is the joker. Who was the team joker back in '95? I remember you mentioning somebody put a snook in somebody's bed. Do you remember that story? What was going on in the background just to keep you together?
Well, I think probably in 1995 in that squad of 28 or whatever, there were probably 28 jokers because everyone was quite mischievous in their own way. Rudolph Straudy was the one who put the snook in Mark Andrews' bed. Joost van der Westhuizen was always a nightmare. There was always things happening. It was a team, I guess. So I guess when you bring together players from different unions who've been used to bashing each other up for many years, firstly, there's really strong leadership in those. All those players are top leaders. Everyone's a captain of their position, and a lot of guys have captained their teams at some point. But everyone had also had a lot of fun. Everyone knew all the gags and all the tricks. And of all the guys I played with, though, probably the most mischievous and the naughtiest. Didn't play in that '95 squad. But it would undoubtedly have to be Dick Muir. There was wherever Dick Muir was, there was just chaos reigning.
I've heard about him. He's got that look about him. He's but you need that in a team, isn't it? There's something special about being in a team. And I know when we brought you together a few years ago, I could just see the camaraderie between you. It was almost like you slipped back into your roles again. And that's something special about certainly rugby. It's one of those sports, isn't it? And long may you continue in the '95 boys for being ambassadors, not only for rugby, Joel, but for the country. And it's been a privilege today speaking to you, and I hope we can have a chat again. And have you got a final message for everybody listening out in the Eastern Cape? Yeah.
So firstly, Dean, if I could just say, rugby is this incredible sport. We keep referring to it as our South African culture and South African. Rugby has its own unbelievable culture. You run onto the field, you smash each other for 80 minutes, and after the game, you're best of mates. I mean, we all have mates from the All Blacks, the Australians, the English. We socialise, we chat to you from time to time, we check in with, we make sure everyone's okay. It's much broader than just the little team you play in. So rugby has this very, very special culture, and the Eastern Cape in particular has a special rugby culture. You've mentioned some of the history there, and some of the great schools that are churning out players from all different cultures. Long may rugby in the Eastern Cape continue, because I think that the future Springbok teams will always have a backbone of players from the Eastern Cape. So support the game down there. Continue to fight, to get test matches, to get first class rugby, and we all look forward to coming down to watch the game there, to support the game, and to spend time in the friendly city.
Thanks so much. Don't leave it too long. You're always welcome here. You know that. Thanks again, Joel.
Cheers.